Samoa ua tunu pele, atunu pele.
This is the unmistakable tapping sound of traditional Samoan tattooing, a technique not practiced anywhere else in the world that dates back thousands of years. The people of Pasifika call it tatau. It is believed that the word tattoo originated from the Pacific, a result of Captain Cook's inability to pronounce tatau properly. Tatau is the practice of creating motifs using an au, a tattooing comb dipped in ink, and a sausau, or tapping stick, to embed the ink into the skin. Soso and solo are the aids that stretch the skin while being tapped, and then the excess ink is wiped away. Tatau is headed by a Tufunga Tā Tatau, or the Guild of Master Tattooists. The female traditional tatau is called malu, and the male traditional tatau is called pe'a or malofie. In 2001, 3 staff members from Auckland City Council got their malu within a very short period. One of them was joined by her husband, who got his malofie with them. It also turned out that several others in the Auckland Council have traditional Samoan tattoos. This is their story of people's journeys to the tatau and the human experience of an ancient practice thousands of years old in today's modern society.
Raised the mangere, so mangere toku maunga. So yeah, proud mangere boy. Mum and Dad always valued education, and for better or for worse, they saw Auckland Grammar, because I had other cousins that went there as well, and they saw that as a school that could really provide a really good education. Not sure how well rounded they thought, but they definitely were future focused and were thinking of an opportunity for me to attend Auckland Grammar School. Just a quick story there is that because I was applying from out of zone, I went with Dad. I had no school to go to beginning of that school year, and I went along with Dad really to see if there was an opportunity there at the school. And so he was waiting for DJ Graham to come along. He was the principal at the time, and when he did come, he I'd say accosted him, I guess, and really pleaded for an opportunity for me to be there. So one thing led to another. Long story short, had an interview, had a test, and had the privilege of attending Auckland Grammar. But it was really humbling for me to see my dad really advocate for me in that way. It was just a side of him that I hadn't experienced before, but it did speak to me that he really valued my future and just trying to present the best opportunities. 3 years leading up to finally getting the tatau, I just needed to make sure that it was the right thing for me to do, and that I really grasped the significance of it, that if I was going to do it, I wasn't going to just do something for even if it's just for the aesthetics. So it had to be something that meant something deeper for me. So that started my journey of researching the tatau, and also included areas of my faith, my culture obviously, and just everything that would encompass my life. So leading up to that, where I landed with that was that if it was something that I would honour God with, then that was something that I would really embrace. But it was also something that connected me to my culture, because as part of my research, I realized that it would be part of connecting to 3,000 years of this practice. And there's, a deeply rooted part of our culture. So all of that put together, and plus the fact that I was, pushing it in terms of age, and knowing the pain that would be involved in the whole process, I had to really count the cost. The actual opportunity came through Gillian, because she got to in connection with the tufunga, and that was it. She was committed to doing it, and she just put it to me whether I wanted to go through with it as well.
Anh vừa không ăn. Anh vừa không ăn mua được sao mà đẹp à. Không ăn mua được sao đẹp mà cắm à. Thôi rồi.
I'm also a 275 Māngere raised girl, but I went to 3 primary schools in Māngere. But my mum also was into education, and she already had me go live with my auntie to go to normal intermediate so I could get into Epsom. So she was thinking way ahead of the game. I am the only girl in the family, so I think she must have thought that she might need to do more in that space. But my brothers also went to Auckland Grammar. We all went to normal intermediate, then went on to those schools. But we had to bus from South Auckland to go there, and it was all to do with the future. She was just thinking about our future, but she did 3 jobs just so that we looked like we fitted into the school. So my brothers would often say, "Mum, we need boots," and they would say, "Oh, we need it by tomorrow," and my mum would have to try and somehow find, back then, $80 for some boots. But she'd actually do it. She went out of her way. Both my parents worked hard to get us there. So there is a real honouring when we think about our parents and the sacrifice they made for us, yeah. Well, I'd been thinking about it for about 10 years or 10 to 15 years. But I always hesitated. I think because, one, I didn't think I was Samoan enough. Wasn't worthy of it. Of course, the pain was a bit off-putting too. But really what happened was my girlfriend, Lanita Tivoli, see, we were so close. She went to Samoa to get her malu done, but I was in contact with her every day, that I felt like I was part of that process. She'd tell me about the healing and just what it was like. And I think it was there that it germinated the idea that I could possibly actually do it, because she did it. What really flipped it is that I had another friend, Fijian friend, who was going to see Pepe's daughter, get the tattoo. And I actually sat there and thought, well, what's stopping me from getting the malu? What is it? And I happened to sit next to Pepe's daughter-in-law and said, oh, I'm just worried about my age. And then she flipped her phone up and she goes, this is my auntie. She's 60. She just got hers done last week. And I thought, wow, then I've got no excuse. So I approached Ray about it because we had talked about, like he said, we talked about it, but we were never really serious. But this time I said, I'm going for it. Did you want to do it? He hesitated at that time. And then I told my cousin, Yusulu Heliso, and she said, I'll do it with you. Then I came back and he was actually ready. He was ready to do it. Here, how did we meet? Through Pacific Circles work. She was, I think, in charge of Pacific Corporation Fund at the time. And then we connected through Puatau Nofo. That's actually a Pacific Health and Safety piece of work that we do with WorkSafe. And we actually won a national award. So through there, connecting with Ngātia, and we've become more like sisters type thing, yeah. She had talked about it, and I think when we were at Auckland Central at the time, and someone got their kāwai, and that triggered it for her, the thought that she might get it done. I had to say, I'm doing it, did you want to jump in? And she said, kind of yes. It really centered around my identity, as you know, and it was about, for me it was spiritual, because as you know, I rejected the culture completely for other reasons. But in finding God and also meeting people from the Samoan Associate at Auckland Uni, they don't know how much of an impact they had to turn my life around in terms of identity. But God challenged me, because he was saying, well, how can you reject the culture that I actually put you in? Because if you reject the culture, you reject me. I was like, oh my gosh. So I wanted to honor the fact that now at this age, I'm transformed. And I wanted the markings to represent the journey and the life that I've had to get to this point in time and give the honor to him. But it also represents my family, and it represents all my friends on that journey.
Lo ingo o Ngātia Taka, o lo Otama o John Taka o Spalangi, sau malenu o Raglan, mi whai ngā roa. O lo Tina o Ngalutene, Elisabetta, Lunai Taka, e sau malenu o Papauta, i Apia. I was born and raised in Papatoetoe. Growing up as a Afkasi, wasn't quite white enough for the white side, not quite brown enough for the brown side. So I studied French and I took off to France where it was okay to be exotic. I lived in France, worked for the French government and was broke the whole time. But my friends who had lived in Japan, they came over and they had money. I thought, oh, I'm going there. So I ended up going to Japan for 5 years and had my first baby there. So yeah, Lena was born in Japan. 2 years in France, 5 years in Japan, and then I got a job in Vietnam and I was learning the 6 tones of Vietnamese, and my friend said to me, what are you looking for? I'm like, what do you mean? Why do you go to all these other people's countries and learn their languages and their cultures? What are you looking for? And I realized I needed to find out about my Samoan side. So I moved my family from Japan to Samoa. I went there for a 6-month holiday to learn the language. I ended up staying 7 years and having another baby. So I'm named after my grandmother Ngātia. She was the reason I went there. So growing up and being kind of not really fitting in on either side. And then I got to my grandma's place and she was a weaver. She made this. She made this for my wedding. So she was a weaver, and I remember sitting with her. Well, the best times was sitting with her in the front room and just stripping the laufala, or actually I'm only allowed to do lau pa'ongo because laufala is too expensive. And yeah, so I'd be stripping the leaves and just listening to her and talking with her. And one day I realized this old lady loves all of me, not just the afa, not just the Samoan half. She loves all of me. And I had this amazing feeling of calm and warmth. And I looked around and I'm not a visitor here. This is my house. This is my land. This is my maunga. Yeah. So that's what made me stay. You know, Grandma passed 2 years ago. So the first thing I learned was make the most of my grandma. Yeah, and now she's gone. Now I have to do the same with my own parents. Nobody in my family has a malu. And the only person in my family, one uncle, has his pea. So our friend Gillian approached me one day and asked me to if I wanted to receive my malu with her, and I thought, I don't know if I'm allowed, because nobody else in my family has one, and my Samoan's not that great, and I didn't feel that I deserved it. And then one day, our colleague received her moko kauai, and she put on a morning tea for our team, and she told us the story of her moko kauai, and she had those similar doubts. And one lady said to her, when she was thinking about getting it, and she was like, "Oh, not sure." When an old lady said to her, "Are you Māori?" She said, "Yes." "Well, then you should have it. If you want it, you should have it. It's yours. It's your right. It's your birthright." And I realized, oh, okay, so maybe that applies for me too. And then when she had finished her presentation, some of us stood up and sang a Waiata Tautoko, and we sang it in Samoan. And when I looked, I saw, okay, you've got your malu, you're getting your malu naked. So I thought, okay, that's it, I'm going to do it. Yeah, so I accepted that challenge. Not even a challenge, that honor. Yeah. There were 5 of us who received, or 3 ladies received our malu. 1 lady received her hand malu, and Gillian's husband, Tolia Foa, he received his be'a.
So, sau mai de o whangori sa fungi, I ko ngaro pa ma, o ki ngaro whale asi u kawo. Lea o po o ore kufunga malofi. O ula lea e kawo vea de ngā sua, I ngā vengal malofi. Mea loke roa ia wa o ngai o le wheku o le whaeronga lea o navigation. Wheku fo ele langi wai whaonga wheku ngā I asola I ringi compass. Ea fo ni fo lau o ka Pacifica. Ke le fo ila ia mangon maru ke le e ringi mang ka puru fo I. Ti tei o a fo ile le mamafa ke. Ia whakawia mari ku pāwai vai rea ka maika.
Ia, ia. I mamangu kai kasi a. E kopo mamangu la po malonga winga a. Ia mamangu refer to like o kiuke o kangaka o kiuke kaunga whai. O me remind mai ai kangaka I le olanga le akoanga o le olanga kaukua ia e pei o le whainga o le kaukua ka kou what you give is what you get e pa ye le sa me mau o le kele lau poa ia o kele funa na pese o me uma papenga e kofu ngai ka mai mamangu lai ia kofu le malawinga o le ku whakasinga kang mai le ka mai mea ku whakas yang mo le winga o le ngā rurua whakasi ai uma ele mengi ngā ele mekas e whatenga la le whaonga manu ele kakau ai kau pula ngā kala e wea inga kakau o ngā ngai loa ia mea la taro ai mai a ki rei o ngā mangua o mele kau no ngā whapea whai
Ko whito toku maunga, ko taufua toku waka, ko moana nui a kiwa toku moana, o ko moataa toku hapu, ko Ngāti Hāmoa I toku iwi. My mother is a Schuster, and before that her mum was a Brown. And on my father's side, my dad his surname is South, and I was born in the South Island down in Timaru. I've got 4 children. I have 3 boys and 1 girl, ranging from 28 down to 15. They are Māori Samoan and all very different from each other. I work at the Auckland Council. I've been a librarian since I was 17, So that was in about 1990, and still work in libraries now, so I still consider myself a librarian. I love everything about libraries. I love the stories, I love the warmth, the non-judgmental, free, warm, dry space that it is for anyone and everyone to use. And I was proud of the children that I'd already had, proud of my family, you know, all of those things. As I got older, I realised more and more the importance of being Samoan or being who I am. And so I think I was a creative person, I loved art, but I really loved stories and storytelling, being a librarian too. So that was a part of just telling the story of who I am. I'd already begun the journey of decorating my body, I suppose. I suppose that's just another way of telling a story, you know. And I look back on that, and that was obviously the first part of that journey of realising that my body could be a canvas. And then realising as I got older, because I was in libraries, that actually this is a way of storytelling. This is a way of me telling the story of who I am in my life and just being really proud of that. So wanting to show my pride in being Samoan, it wasn't something that I wanted to hide. But one of the things I think that I remember as the most special was when it was all finished, and I kind of just lay there for a bit, and Mihi came along. She's like, "You need to stand up." I was like, "What?" So she's kind of stood me up, and my daughter just looked at me and she was like, "Mum, I feel like they've been there forever. They've always been there." And I was like, that's kind of when I started losing it a bit, I think, you know, a bit of adrenaline, but, you know, the tears, and then they just kind of took me out and had a shower. And but that moment there when she said that, for me, like my personal journey leading up to that, I'd always known my ancestors were with me, I suppose, because of some of the hard stuff that I'd been through in the previous couple of years personally. So I often, I suppose, called on them in those moments of true sadness and, you know, despair, I suppose. But that was when my daughter said that to me, I felt like, yeah, my ancestors have always been with me, and now they've shown themselves to me, and now I can show them to everyone, so that when people see me, I hope that they don't just see me or just see a picture. They see that that comes with a whole lot of history, and that I carry that with me everywhere I go.
My mother's life was mainly in Whatuia before she came to New Zealand here when she was about 25 in 1948. And my mum already had my beautiful sister Josephine, so she was a single mother when she met my Palangi father. They got married, and then they had 3 children, my brother Carl, myself, and Jacopo, Jacob. Sadly, I lost my mother when I was 6 years old. She died suddenly as a young woman, and left behind us children. So she left behind my sister, myself, and my 2 brothers. And so we had 5 years of living with our Palangi father. My father is German-Irish. My dad was very strict and quite fiery. So it was an interesting upbringing with this very strict father that I had. And I remember probably when, if we didn't get things right, you know, my dad would, he's really scary, you know, and bring up the belt and things like that. And I remember once when I was probably about 11, he said, "Don't you ever let anybody ever know you're Samoan." And I just thought, what's that about? So I found it confusing. I tell you what got me is when I went to Samoa for the first time and the doors opened of the aeroplane, and I just felt this massive impact of heat. And I thought, what is that? And as I continued to walk down the steps, I thought, oh, I'm here. And so what was it? It just seemed as though I was accepted there. There was this real sense of, wow, this is what Mum left behind. This is what she gave up, you know. And then as I connected with my mother's family in Whatuia, more so Apia Park, you know, I went to places where she had been, yeah? And then my grandmother's sister, Auntie Amalia, who lived in Pango. So here I am living at Apia Park, and she would come from Pango. And she just loved on me. And then she would say, come on, you take me up to Mangiangi to our family graves. I want to go and see Mama. I went, okay then. And so we have a plot up in Mangiangi, not in the main public cemetery. And she would sit on the graves and she would talk and cry and then we'd pull weeds. And she told me about my mum and the family history. So every time Auntie Amalia came, I would write everything down. And going to Mum's homestead at Whatuia, there was just this real sense of arriving and belonging. Then I talked to my Auntie Amalia when she came from Pango. Pepe, that's for you. And I went, so I kind of sat back, what do you mean? And she said, my mama had the malu. I went, did she? And she said, my sister Pepe, your grandmother, had the malu. Because where you come from, your great-grandmother was a taupo in Savaii. I went, was she? And she said, it's for you. And then I said, did my mother have the malu? And she said, no, Pepe, she didn't. I went, why not? Why didn't she have it? And she said, because in her time, due to Christianity, the missionaries, I suppose colonisation in a sense, it wasn't valued. It was probably seen more as a sinful, yeah. And I went, oh, I can't believe that. And then I said, I love it. And she goes, that's for you. So Suluapi said, okay. So he came to Waiala and he did I won't say it's the malu, so he did like a taulima, but not on my, well, he did the one on my hand, but on my leg. And as towards finishing, he said, Pepe, you need to have the malu. And I said, oh, but this is what people said. He said, Pepe, I need to finish this. I need to finish the malu. You come back when you're ready. So that's why it looks a little bit different to other women, yeah. And I did. I came back within a year because I had to come back to New Zealand for some surgery, and then I went back within a year and he finished it.
When it comes to the tatau, there is a phrase spoken by some that has put off many from getting the malo fie or malu, samo mole ngutu. First, tattoo your mouth. This intimidating phrase has put many off from getting their tatau and connecting to their culture, heritage, and ancestry.
Aua ko ke whewhi kara lewa pe ka mo mulungu karpe e se sere ngā kara. Ai doa lau loko malo ma fo le me whai. Whaongaanga o lau pea, po lau mar. O le me pe kusiri ngā, ma ka ua. O isi mei ko aku, it all depends on you. Pule alo commitment e a oi ni mea mare me whaasamo. So ele ese lau paseng le value le kakau ni. Mal. Ele va pe o ti value me. Paulisi me le ngai. Ia, sui whainga ko mau whaavai. I le health and safety ngalwe. Sui mea, sui ngila. Fufuru lei mwa wale sui fumalo lohi ngarkanka. Se peo sa ukali aku nga i le value reo le pe. Male mat. I se lau paseng. Nga kero ka meke whika ka. Ai whewhere upure ka mo mongu kari pe. Yeah. I whaakaria lau a whekairu ngukuka a kairu pe. Yeah. Kei leo langa le kama Samoa, Marking Samoa. Whangau loa le kama. Whapuku le lama. Mongkua la. Leo mo ya ko lo 05, 01 kari pe a. Engal ko loa mea sa require e pasi eire le kāngo le kakau le. Ole whainga mo ole ngalue le wao. Sami. Ma le whainga o kau kua ngofo kua vai kongo le ai. apa fango o ye ai muri pasi do mea ngā lo le karo pe le la wa kar pe ai le ma se me kongo fa makaranga le a me la wa kula fa wa le langa kau kala fai la le o te minga lo ka mikiki kongo fa le alu le au manga alu wa ko au manga ngalang kau polo a maka fa me mo kama lo kali ile le la makai ye vai la le ko makai nge ya wa le van kar pe sa onga le me ngā leo ke whamukala I te kupulanga le ini, I māla malama.
Tēnā koe, Christine. Nau mai whakapiki mai e te hoa ātāhua. Please welcome Lotu Fuli from the Manugogo. Te whaataro whaatu wha ia mana manu tatou atu luu ua tatou whaatasi le nipo.
Like everybody else, the land of milk and honey, searching for a better life. Mum and Dad were actually pretty comfortable in Samoa. Dad was a principal. He met Mum because she was a young teacher starting out at the school he was at, and that's how they met. My brother was born while they were stationed at one of the schools in the Guabex in Upolu, and then I was born not long after that. But they wanted a better future for us, just like many others who came as well in that migration in the 70s. So I schooled in South Auckland, schooled here in Otara, and I'm really proud of that. Did my right up to sixth form at Tangaroa College, and then went to Otahu College to do my seventh form because they didn't offer scholarship back in the day at Tangaroa. From there I went on to the University of Auckland, graduated with my BA and then my Masters in English with honours. Years later though, I did go back and I did my Master of Arts in Language Teaching because I wanted to go to Japan, which I did, and I lived in Japan for 4 years. And then when I came back to New Zealand, I did a Master of Literature with honours, and then eventually I did go and do my Bachelor of Laws with honours as well. My dad was a real strong person, a real strong man. He was a fighter, he was, a boxer, a rugby player, all of those things. So when we were growing up, he was like our hero when we were kids. But we would see him mainly on Sundays. That's the one day he didn't work. But he would leave early in the morning before the sun came up, come home briefly when we would come home from school, get changed, get ready and jump on his 10-speed bike and he'd be off to his evening job, his night job. Wouldn't come back again until early hours of the morning. So, but we saw him as that champion for our family. He was the provider. We all knew that he was working extra hard so that Mum could go back to school, so that she could have a better life. And he always intended to, but, once we got to like 7 kids, 8 kids, 9 kids, plus all the whaalawe-laves that come with it. But that's one of the things I think that he regretted because he always wanted to go back to university and get his qualifications, but he just, never quite got there. So my dad passed away in 2020 during COVID, in between the first lockdown and the second big lockdown. Made it to 80, he made it to 80, yeah. Well, the malu was always there. That was always because, fundamentally I'm a Samoan girl, a Samoan person, Samoan woman. And then my best friend Te Wila, she and I were talking about getting it done when we were now in our mid-20s. But again, she went and got it done herself because she was now living in Samoa. And so, And then I think I just kind of like put it to the back of my mind. I sort of forgot about it, lived my life, lived in Korea, lived in Japan. And it was when I came back to New Zealand and went on holiday with my son at the end of 2010 with no intentions to do it. My dad's now living in Samoa because he's retired. So we went to Samoa, and we're staying at a hotel and we're just about to go and see my dad. And then Te Wila calls me, at Aggie Gray's. And she says, oh, her sister's here from New Zealand. She's getting her malu done. She needs a saw. And I was like, well, I wasn't really thinking, I haven't thought about it. And she was like, look, you've wanted to do it for how long? Decades now. If you don't do it now, you're probably never going to do it. And I thought to myself, well, she is right. And my dad and Mum and Dad are here. My son is here. And so I did it. So I said, oh, okay then, all right. And we went and we got it done. Yeah, and I'm really glad I did because I think if I'd missed that opportunity, that probably would have been it. It's a source of pride and a source of grounding for me and connection too. So when I was teaching at De La Salle, for example, when the boys would see my malu, they'd be like, oh, miss, ma ngai long malu, you know. And so that was another way for me to connect to the kids. And then even the families, the parents, who sometimes might feel intimidated coming into those spaces, but when they knew that I had a malu, or if they saw it, then they would feel, it's almost like a belonging and a connection that they would feel. And it takes down some of those barriers because they automatically know, oh, okay, ole Samoa mao ilia, you know. So I can talk to her and she'll understand me and she'll know what I'm talking about and who I am and where I come from. In this space, in the political space, I guess it gives me a bit of, it makes me feel goa to do the things that I need to do. Because sometimes you do have to raise your voice, and sometimes you do have to fight the fight, a good fight, you know. And it does remind me who I am and gives me that strength of my ancestors to know, yeah, that you can be a kamaika koa, yeah.
About 16, 18 years ago, you know, Doctor, our younger brother, Tavu'i, Reg, so Tavu'i, Mum was still alive, and Mum was able to bless him when he wanted to receive the tatau. So Tavu'i went through the journey of receiving the tatau, and I sat with him for over that period. At the time, I wasn't ready. Somewhat life carried on, and in February 2010, our mother passed away. Our father passed away in 97, and I think I lost the opportunity to seek her blessings. Once she passed, I was also going through that grieving process, that grieving period where I was soul searching to missing some parts of my life had just walked away. So in 2011 to 2018, it took me that long to keep visiting my mum and dad up in the Waikumete Cemetery, to keep soul searching spiritually, to find out and to ask and to seek for their blessings, because I felt the 50 mark is coming up, and I really would like, in recognition of my 50 years on this earth, I was ready to receive the tatau. Following that, I sat down with the whole family, and not only my immediate family, but I sat down with my brothers, you know, Leilua and Tavu'i and Whaalonga, we had and Pulotu, and we had a family discussion around the journey, and I'm ready to receive such blessings. So accepting the tatau is not as simple as getting a tattoo on your arm. You know, there's a whole lot of things, obligation that comes with it, and these obligations have been around for 3,000 years. So that was the big mountain, big hurdle for me. That goal was before I could accept it. I'm accepting 3,000-year-old culture in our wha Samoa. Look, you know, as a Samoan born male, I think service the family, service the community. You know, I think as a Samoan born, we were all taught, ole ala I le pule o le tautua, you know, the pathway to leadership is through service. And I think that powerful tagline, you know, as a Samoan, you live with it every day. And whatever roles we have in the organisations, or whatever role we do in, whether it's a sports field, employment, or your church or community group, I think we live by that line and that proverb. So I'm here to serve my families, and I'm here to serve my community. And I think it's embedded in our culture that's been around our wha Samoa for over 3,000 years. And I think we all have an obligation to role model our kids, to make sure that they follow our journey and continue to serve our people with honour and respect.
I reckon it's keeping our culture strong. There's heaps of New Zealand borns that want to know Tapa Samoa, but they haven't been taught it. So they go for this, go for itself. It's just to connect to the past. In Samoa, it's different. The kakao. Your kakao in Samoa is different. You come to New Zealand, you get your kakao. Your kakao is different here too. But it's actually the same. Like in Samoa, you go plantation. Over here, you come do your work. That's your kakao. Working for your family, putting a roof over your head. As well, you're serving your mum and dad. Just providing for your family here is your kakao. It's pretty much similar to Samoa.
Yeah.
But similarities are different. Like plantation. Over here, you're working a 9 to 5.
E kako mafofau mo pe fa polan mo ko fanga ule wori ingi alanga sau le grandpa le wori ingi ya kai no sau su embanguia a war ka usingo samu e lima vai kako ule ingi le ku wai far sam for the folk ko ainga re o e ku sa le ka ku pe yo ka kala ye feso e a usu isi so e miki sa mo manga e usu foka ko le balu kai o finger bien e kukus salle al value or ka ngi o la se lo pasing dang or ka le ko e ko ngi ki e u ya ka meki maka ka ngi maka mai ka ile la ko wa ngu o li sa e pala ai e ro e a me o por for me ai por suo por la ungo e ka lole kakao malu e push la e kakao malu ya e kanga ngi e committed me le fai usa le vel mai o le sifo ia nga o kakao ngi e mala mai ka meki kanga ngi me ka ko e me sia ka meki fanga ngi
Marks of service, marks of remembrance, marks of connection. An ancient people in a modern society wanting to belong, wanting to participate, and wanting to make a difference through the council. We spoke to 2 council members and the chair of the local board. Although they don't have the traditional malo fie or malu, they do wear modern tattoos with traditional motifs.
Community, helping the community. So I was 14 when I decided. I said, I know my occupation I want to be in, that is the police. I ended up getting School C, 6th form cert, UE Maths, UE English, and then I left in 1977, straight into the police force in 78. So did that and man, just loved it. But that was at 14 I knew, and it was all about community, helping our people. I know I got that from mum and dad, just helping people. Yeah, 38 and a half years, loved it. It was the bomb. It was just helping people. With the police, did a lot of the jobs that people don't like. One of them was, and I really didn't like it, which was attending deaths, especially with kids. But you had to. That was part of your role. In the 70s as well, late 70s, that was the first time I came across racism, believe it or not, even in 78. And that was in Howick. And the majority of the population there were European, were Palangi. Those are some of the trials and tribulations that you come across. I think they found that a lot of our Pacific, because the Pacific community was growing, everybody knew that there were a lot of our families, our Ainga coming from the islands. Our police district realised that, hey, a lot of our Pacific community, they're moving into this area where we police, and we need to adapt and make sure that a lot of our communities end up knowing people that are going to help them, and not this picture of the police being the person always to lock up mum and dad or lock up the brothers and cousins and uncles and aunties. Being the first Pacific liaison officer in New Zealand at Southside in Counties Manukau, that was really, that was just so humbling. And, you know, that was in the year 2000 officially, and I thought to myself, this is the best job you could ever have, because it was helping our Pacific community, and at times I would help our Māori community as well. The community said, Alf, we want you to go through to represent Māngere. So I put my name down and was successful. And it was just another extension of helping the community, it really was. And that's my life, that's been my family's life, is to help. And so it's another extension. So that's why I joined local government. You know, I'm proud to be Māori, I'm proud to be Samoan. And I'm not going to let anybody put down Māori or put down Samoan when I know that space is my space. Others can't be Māori and Pacific if they're not Māori and Pacific. So don't talk about us when you don't know what you're talking about. Don't do that. So when I got this one done here, I don't know, but it felt really good getting done and getting it done traditionally. And that's what I just really love with this one, because, and I didn't flinch or cry. And the interesting thing getting the taulima was I was thinking about my Māori grandmother. And so when I got that done and I came back from Samoa, all my Māori relatives were going, you're closer to your mum, how come you didn't get the Māori one first? I said, because I was in Samoa and I just needed to get it done. Māoris always said up home, they always said to me, your left side is your mother's side because it's closest to your heart. And so I got my, so it's all over here and up here, and that's my whakapapa. So when I got that done, and for Ngāpuhi, red was the colour. But when I got that done, all the Samoan brothers and relatives going, hey, how come that Māori one is bigger than the taulima man? And I said, oh, God, please. So I ended up going to see Joe Brown. And Joe Brown ended up over here doing all this. And he says, Alf, you know I can't touch that because that one of the other tufunga did it. And I said, yeah, no, I understand that. So he put the koru in to represent my mum's side and then done all this. And then what happened was, my Māori relatives were going, how come you ended up going down further? It's bigger than the Māori one. So now I gotta get it even.
This is actually called a fusi. My understanding that taulimas were developed because of the Peace Corps in Samoa. So those Americans that came to Samoa to help them, and they wanted some sort of some sort of symbol to remind them of their time in Samoa. And so Suluape and some of the tattooers developed taulima, which is usually a band on the arm tattooed. But this particular one is a fusi. So both my parents got the malofie. My mother got her malu and my father his be'a in 1990 or 91. And part of the malu and the be'a at the bottom of at the end of the tattoos on the knees or up on the thighs for the woman, or where the men have in the chest area, is the fusi. And this same fusi is the same one that my parents had, my mother and father. And so I got this in fifth form when I was 15. My parents wanted to give this as a gift for me for doing school C. And so people usually go, oh, what do you do for, to celebrate school C? Oh, I got a tattoo. And so, yeah, and so when we went to Suluape, he's related to my mother through our Uta'iluo side, and he did the same design. So he did their malu and be'a, put the same fusi. And so fusi, my understanding is binds the tatau together, And so in old days, Samoans would put their most valuable treasures in a siapo, fold it into a siapo, and then they put a fusi around it. And that's to signify how much we treasure the contents of it. And so the malu and the be'a, those are treasures of Samoa that are bound by the fusi, and I'm now bound to my parents through this particular fusi on my arm. And so I haven't got the full be'a yet. I haven't got to that stage yet. I'm waiting for my brothers. I'm blaming it on my brothers. They say the same thing. I'm waiting for Reese to say it. But we will eventually get there. But for now, I'm proud to have the same fusi that's on my parents that binds me to them. My mum was a lecturer at the Teachers Training College, and so she knew the education system. And as all parents, they want the best for our kids, and so that's why she wants me to go to grandma to get those educational opportunities, but still trying to ensure that I'm grounded in my Samoan identity. She knew that I'll be traversing these white spaces, these predominantly Palangi institutions with their values and cultures, but I needed to be grounded in who I am as a Samoan. We need to be reflected in the structures and the processes of council. Otherwise, we'll feel like we're brown-skinned Palangis. I could see that within that, the way we would interact as local board members and elected members, that there was a willingness to accommodate our culture. So all those things that our people, the council people, were trying to accommodate and ensure they got right, because I guess they know that, you know, with the Samoans are a prominent community within Auckland Council, and we make up the landscape, and we're continuing to make up the electoral landscape. And so we have built into our local board engagement sessions where our local board staff go out and have these deliberative democracy sessions where we get a group of our Samoan leaders from the Otara or Papatoe meet together and we have those discussions. Those sort of changes are happening in our local board, and we do see some changes at the regional council level. We have good Pacific staff in there now that are trying to change those sort of things. So I think we're, you know, slowly changing things in council that makes us feel like we can actually contribute to council processes and that, yeah.
So I was living in Point England at the time, and 50% of that area, Point England, Panmure, Glen Innes, are Pacific. And that was not represented in the leadership of the area at the time. And to me, I thought that was unfair. I thought that the decisions that had previously been made by Auckland City Council favoured the richer areas and didn't, you know, look after kind of the poorer areas of central Auckland. So that's why I put myself forward. I did ask my friends that live in the area, who grew up there, to put themselves forward, but it wasn't for them. You know, a lot of them were humble, not as confident, and just didn't feel that they wanted to put themselves into that space. And I think it's because I'm from Mangere and I was, you know, south side. You don't have that kind of screen, I think, in your thinking. You just think something needs to be done, I'm going to do it. You know, you get a lot out of the haters. And I posted something on my Facebook showing it was a montage of all these faces involved in the development of Auckland, and none of those faces were brown. And this is Auckland Council, Eke Panuku, you know, all that were involved in planning the development of the city. And so I posted about that going, look at that, you know, that's an indictment on our city. And it's supposed to be the Polynesian capital of the world. We're supposed to value our diversity, as we say in the Auckland Plan. I went on the Te Puna Maunga Authority because 5 of the Maunga are in my area that I represent. And so, you know, I felt I needed to be in there to represent our communities with what happens with the Maunga. And boy, did I learn a lot, because once I got on there, I quickly learned that actually that's like Palangis trying to tell Samoans what to do with their own land in Samoa. And if I look at it from that perspective, I just think, oh my gosh, galofai the Maoris, you know, like They can't do anything on their own land. That's their maunga, their ancestors, and they can't do anything on there without other people setting up organisations under the banner of caring about the maunga, which is really just racism. So I spoke up for them, and then that's when I first started getting negative media and attracted the attention of a lot of racist and far-right organisations. I got called a violent black dog that needs to be put down. It's really cool to be doing this interview about the Te Tau, because when I'm sitting in the meetings and I'm being challenged like that, I just look down at this and then I just think, oh, no, just carry on. Yeah, it's something that symbolises strength for me and reminds me, you know, being Samoan, we are strong and smart and resourceful and, you know, connected to what's important to us, which is family, our faith. Yeah. And, you know, it's not the 70s or the 80s anymore where you just put Pacific in advisory groups. And so you need to go for those decision-making roles. I keep telling people, if you want to make a real difference, be a real influence, then you need power. And I'll use that power to make a difference. When my dad said to me, I didn't come to this country to see you cleaning a factory floor next to me. So I always had that in my mind. And then when I became a counsellor and I talked about, well, Dad, I'm not on the factory floor, I'm on the 26th floor, you know, running this city.
Samoa la ua tunu pele, atunu pele ilo uanganga, osita mama ya ukilani, lefa fia fia, usimai lefa afofonga, I say you bese mafa matala, leneita mama